Hello everyone, it's Anthony Bandiero, attorney for Blue to Go Law Enforcement Training, bringing you another roadside chat, some questions that people asked, and we got a great question from an officer in Colorado. What's the situation?
Okay, so the situation is you have a female calling from a metro train. She's riding on the train. She sees a male occupant sitting on the train. She sees like the butt of a handgun sticking out of his pocket. So she calls the police. She gives a good clothing description of this guy. She gives her own phone number. She's able to identify him. So what happens is the train gets stopped by the train police at the next, stop.
And they're going to hold it up a little bit.
Yeah, so they stop the train. They hold it up a little bit. They open the doors. They let the occupants out. Mm-hmm. So the question is, with this call of the female saying that she sees the butt of a gun sticking out of this guy's pocket, is that enough to actually stop and detain this guy? And further, not only that, but since the police kind of ordered the train to stop, did we just detain all the occupants on the train as well?
All right. So these are good questions. Let's start with the actual call for service. Are people, to your knowledge, allowed to have concealed weapons on these trains?
Yes, under Colorado law, so long as you have a valid permit, you can carry your firearm on the train.
Do you know anything about open carry? Probably not, right?
Not in Colorado, no.
Let's presume that open carry would also be allowed, because that's another argument that we can make here. Is like he is, concealed carry is it's not supposed to be discerned by the naked eye, right?
Right.
If he's having the butt sticking out of the gun, then he's not really concealing it, which is we want concealed carry because we don't want people to get alarmed, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So let's presume that also either one would not be illegal, open carry and definitely concealed carry. Do you think that this is enough to temporarily detain him and to try to figure out if he has a permit?
No, I really don't. I don't think that you're really alleging any criminal activity. I mean, we know that you can carry your firearm with a CCW on the train. Mm-hmm. That in and of itself, the caller also said that he didn't take the gun out, he didn't brandish it at anybody, he didn't threaten anybody with it. So I don't see any allegations of criminal activity. I don't see any reason why lawfully you would be able to stop and detain this guy and check to see if he does have a valid CCW.
Actually, they might be alleging legal activity, right? I mean,
right, yeah.
I mean, you based on what you're telling me, he's doing what the law allows.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, you're alleging legal activity. Mm-hmm. So we know one thing about the caller, probably from California. So the point is that we get these calls all the time. We get, first of all, I don't want to minimize the call because, to me. I'm making jokes, but at the end of the day, there is a guy on the train with a gun, and we do have somebody calling in. Mm-hmm. My mentality with this, when I was a sergeant, is, hey, they are calling for a reason. If the person looked like on the up and up, and they seemed like they were mentally stable and had their act together and was just printing, mm-hmm. or the jacket blew back and you saw a gun, even they may not be comfortable around firearms, right? But they are calling for a reason. In other words, to me, I like to say their spidey senses are saying something to them. Right. And so what my belief is that I do believe that cops should respond to this particular call. Now, some calls for service are kind of ridiculous. Like, hey, there's a guy walking on the highway and it's not a controlled access highway. The guy can walk down the highway. It's like, okay, why do you care? I mean, it's like, okay, we might could probably invest resources in that. But here, do you think we should at least try to talk to the guy?
Yeah, I think so. I think what's the harm in trying to make a consensual encounter?
Yeah.
If you do happen to see him getting off the train, as long as tactically it's safe and you feel appropriate doing it,
yeah.
I think there's no reason why you shouldn't do a consensual encounter.
Now, I will tell you that there are relatively several cases on this, a handful, but they're enough to kind of get a pattern here. The one thing that the courts are worried about is racial profiling. And there's a case out of the Ninth Circuit, there's a case out of the Third Circuit involving people calling in and making a presumption that this person is not allowed to have a gun, right? Because they're in a high crime area and so forth. And rightfully, and by the way, it wasn't a consensual encounter. It was a detention. And the officers were detaining these people to say, hey, where's your concealed weapons permit? And I got to tell you, they threw those cases out, rightfully so, because we cannot just presume just because somebody lives in a high crime area of a certain demographic that they are illegal. In fact, the presumption, especially after Bruin, which is that Supreme Court case on concealed carry, carry outside the home, I should say, not concealed carry, but carrying outside the home. The presumption is that because all states are a shell issue state, including California, New York, and so forth, that the presumption is that they are carrying lawful.
Right.
In other words, I don't look at a car and see a driver and presume that they don't have a license. I don't look at a person with a fire and presume that they don't have a license. Now, make a consensual counter if you believe that's what the right thing to do under the circumstances, but let's just not presume. And so the next issue is the detention, the alleged detention of all the train passengers. Okay, this is a novel argument because you really do not see these cases. Why would you? In other words, if there's a crazy guy in the bus, well, let's say that the officers stop let's say I'm on the bus, and the officers stop the bus pre my destination. Let's just say mid route, and really it was not a good stop. It's like it's a hunch, and blah blah blah, right? And I sue the officers and say you violated my rights because you're unlawfully detaining me. Well, even if that's a viable argument, what's the money there? Is an attorney really going to take that case? You're telling me that you were stopped for a few minutes because the officers, they didn't have reasonable suspicion. But what is really the damages there? There could be what's called nominal damages, but I'll tell you, there is a defense. You want to take what the defense is? There is a defense on behalf of the officers that even if a detention occurred here, which I'm not sure that it did, but even if it did, what would be a good defense on the officers?
I would say the defense is that it's de minimis. It's minimally intrusive. It's very small in nature. The train already stops. It makes stops. Maybe it wasn't going to stop at this particular stop or station,
or even for that long.
Right, but it's minimal. It's de minimis.
Yeah. I agree. I think Nick is onto something here. I think that look, it's some searches and seizures, if they even are that, right? And again, we can debate that whether or not, because I do believe there's an intent element here. I mean, as far as show of authority, are you really trying to? You say you're running after a guy. Okay, let me give you my example, right? You're running after a guy, and it's a crowded area, Times Square. You say, "Stop, police," and other people stop, and they look. Were they detained?
No,
of course not, right? So I think the situation is kind of similar here, even though not exact. Regardless, de minimis. I think we've beaten this one to death. So I think that the stop itself is problematic. I think that the detention is not. Whatever, if other people, and I think that's where we're at. Anything else to add?
No, I think that's about it.
All right, guys, if you like what we're doing here, like, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends. Please go to bluetogold.com and really check out our free training. We have free webinars every week. Join us by Zoom. You can actually join in pajamas with a mimosa. They're actually not in the morning usually, but if you want to drink a mimosa at night, that's cool too. And if you have any questions for us, also go to bluetogold.com or put something in the comments. And with that, my friends, stay safe.